attack Kiihne. He's playing against Nick Cowden. Nick's on Jeskai control. Zach's on Storm. The names are on the wrong side. We'll get this figured out.
It's fine. Everyone knows what Zach Kiihne looks like. He's right there on your right with the hat on. I'm just kidding. Of course, on the left, we will get that fixed momentarily. This matchup, though, Ryan, what do you think? Storm versus Jeskai control. Who are you picking?
Ooh, this matchup's always really tight. And I want to look at the specific build of Jeskai. If you're light on Counterspell in your main deck, in particular, some Jeskai players have spell snares, some don't. That's a big one to have in the matchup. All right, we're getting some things figured out, but as it comes to Jeskai versus Storm, I think it's generally a close one. I typically like the Jeskai one in a full game set. If Jeskai can win the first game, then I think they're a pretty significant favor in the match. Both decks very much want to win game one, but Storm almost really needs it. We're going to survey everything that's happening everywhere as we make our way down to Zach Kiihne. Here we are.
This is it. The
Magic
one.
underway.
This is real Magic. Steam Vents versus Steam Vents. I don't want none of that Kolos Eldrazi nonsense. You know, I don't want any colors at all. You know.
Nick Cowden started us
Dredge?
off.
Come on.
Barely even Magic.
It's not. It's like, okay, I once tried to describe Dredge to a new Magic player, and the best thing I could come up with, it's like if your opponent was playing an Uno deck, and you had to bend space and time so that Magic cards interacted with Uno cards. And literally, you only have 3 sideboard cards in your entire 75 that do anything.
Yikes.
Yeah, that's playing against Dredge.
That sounds about right. That's approximately my experience. A lot of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey. We're getting pretty deep into this game, though of course nothing's happened. It's Jeskai versus Storm. First play is on turn 4. Making his land drops, Nick Cowden is going to deploy a Search for Escanta.
You say nothing happened. I say a Serum Visions was cast and a Search for Escanta was cast. Sir.
This is real Magic.
This is...
How could I forget?
This is gentleman's Magic. All right,
and,
ooh,
that is an aggressive remand. I like it. And Cowden's not going to replay it.
Yeah, it's not aggressive when you know your opponent is not going to tap out for it again.
Right. Yeah, play it again, I dare you.
Yeah. Let's. Do you want to tap out against my, I don't know, 8 cards in hand Storm deck? No?
Not too much.
Okay. Remand it.
Kiihne will continue the trend of making land drops, now online with 2 Steam Vents and 2 basic islands. Life total is 17 the way things have been shaping up. Cowden hanging out on 19 with an uncracked Scalding Tarn. Ooh, and Kiihne is going to cast a Desperate Ritual and empty the Warrens.
Wow, that's a pretty powerful 6 tokens with very little investment. He cast a Desperate Ritual, an Opt, and then main phase to empty the Warrens for 6 tokens, and that's a lot of pressure that Nick has to find an answer to pretty quickly, or his life total is going to go to 0 in a hurry.
Yeah. Jeskai typically has some small number of main deck Supreme Verdict. That's largely what Cowden will be drawing to here, but he does need to find something quickly. Electrolyze can buy some time. He has a few draws, but he is under duress.
And if you're curious what outs Nick Cowden has to these 6 Goblin tokens, you can use the Cardboard Live extension that should be hovering right over your screen if you're watching on desktop, or you can check the little puzzle piece icon if you're on mobile. We are still working on getting the exact list up, but that's out of the wreckage.
Yeah, I'll tell you what he had.
That's not a good one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good. It works.
It gives Kiihne a lot of lands.
That's a lot of mana.
Let's see how many basics he's registered. I think he has 5 total in the deck.
Right,
so
he already had 3 in play, so he only gets 3. But when your entire deck is devoted to generating mana, extra lands is great.
Yeah, so this is actually the kind of the point that Storm tries to build to in this matchup, where you just have so many lands that Jeskai is trying to counter spells for 4 mana. You can really pressure them with your mana advantage. So as you're saying, that Settle is quite a bit worse than Supreme Verdict here. Kiihne is going to fire off to Gifts Ungiven.
You got to do what you got to do, though, and even though that Settle the Wreckage did clear off all 6 tokens, which were pressuring his life total, giving those extra lands to Kiihne might result in his demise anyway.
Gifts Ungiven going to find the 3 rituals. That's Manamorphose, Paretic, and Desperate Ritual. And it looks like Brawl, Chief of Compliance was the 4th card. It's going to the graveyard anyway. along with the Manamorphose. So just the 2+1 rituals to Kiihne's hand.
Yeah, you never want to give him the card draw. Looks like Kiihne is wrapped up on mana already, obviously, with the Settle the Wreckage happening, as well as just hitting most of his land drops for the entire game. The ritual effects are basically just adding to the storm count and not really adding anything else to the plays.
Field a Rune and search for Escanta for Cowden, sitting back on Cryptic Command mana. We're going back to Kiihne. His hand is stacked.
Yeah, if he has a single remand here, the game's probably over. Nick is very unlikely to have 2 pieces of interaction here for 4 mana. He would have to have something like Negate plus Logic Knot. A single Cryptic Command, not going to do it. And, of course, no 1 mana interaction, really. Maybe a single Spell Snare.
Yeah.
But doesn't look like he has access to it right now.
So Kiihne's going to go to work. Here's Goblin Electromancer. There's Poetic Ritual. Storm's at 2. 3 red mana floating.
All right, let's see him work. Zach Kiihne obviously knows what he's doing with his deck. Let's see if he can pull it out this turn in a flurry of spells and grape shots.
There's a whole bunch of red rituals still in the hand. We know about the 1 more from the Gifts Ungiven, and looks like he has 2 Desperate Rituals and declining to Splice. But here comes Desperate Ritual. Red mana up to 4, Storms up to 3. That resolves. And just here's another Desperate Ritual.
Yes, it's interesting the way that cards like Goblin Electromancer and Baral Chief of Compliance work in the Storm deck. They effectively turn all of your Desperate Rituals and Pyretic Rituals into Dark Rituals. 1 mana to gain 3 is significantly better than 2 mana to gain 3, where you're only effectively gaining 1 at a time. I just thought that was worth pointing out. It's really where the core strength of the deck comes from with these storm strategies.
Yeah, when you have these mana creatures online, it really feels like you're playing Legacy and your opponent's playing Modern, right?
Right.
And here's Past in Flames, speaking of playing Legacy.
Yeah, it looks like Cowden has access to a Logic Knot, but I don't even know if he has enough to... Ooh, was I just wrong?
Ooh, that
Does he
is
just
negate.
have both?
He's been hanging out with that one.
Holy crap, he might actually get through it.
Kiihne has a good amount of magic mana to work with, but if there's Logic Knot at the ready, then he needs more than just Flashback Past in Flames.
Yeah, and he's already burned a bunch of rituals this turn. I don't know, he might have multiple copies of Grape Shot. He could potentially go for Past in Flames on the flashback for 4 mana. Normally it would cost 5, but 4 with Electromancer. That would leave him with potentially access to 2 red mana. And then in the counterspell is 7. Grape Shot number 1 is 8. Grape Shot number 2 is 9. That's only 17. That's a little bit short.
So there's the flashback on Past in Flames. There's Logic Knot. It's like Storm's at 8. Kiihne still with 1 red mana floating and an untapped Steam Vents.
Maybe it's 9 and 10, and I could be wrong here.
2 Grape Shots.
Bang!
Pretty trivial to go off if you have the right tools after your opponent gives you 3 lands.
No, that's true. Kiihne had it locked up from the start. He had to beat through 2 pieces of interaction. At that point, it was literally just navigating in such a way that he didn't accidentally mess up. And we see there 2 pieces of interaction. The best Nick could have done in that scenario wasn't good enough.
Yes. So we're going to go to the sideboards. Nick Cowden on Jeskai Control is going to look for a little help. Options available. He has 1 Lyra Dawnbringer, 1 Abrade, 2 Ceremonious Rejection, 3 Surgical Extraction, 2 Dispel, a Baneslayer Angel, a Runed Halo, a Negate, 2 Vendilion Click, and an Engineered Explosives. Quite a few options, actually.
Yeah, so basically you have 2 points to check. You need to be able to beat Empty the Warrens, and you need to be able to beat Grape Shot. Something like Runed Halo beats half of that. But it doesn't stop your opponent from kind of churning through their deck and finding anything that they might need to go off. So I don't even know if Rune Halo is actually worthwhile as a sideboard card in this particular matchup. As far as the rest, I think Dispel is great because the rituals are instant speeds. I would probably bring in some amount of Surgical Extraction just because if you're able to counter a Past in Flames and then Surgical Extraction it, if your opponent doesn't have a ton of resources, it's going to be very difficult for them to kill you without access to Past in Flames. Aside from that, probably the Vendilion Click so you can clock them a little better. Probably the Negate, and probably the Engineered Explosives in order to give you 1 extra out to those potentially 2 more Empty the Warrens coming in out of the sideboard.
And on Kiihne's side, he has some tools as well. There's 2 Abrades, 2 Blood Moons, an Echoing Truth, 2 Empty the Warrens, additional copies. He does have that main deck one. An Ignite Memories, 2 Lightning Bolts, 4 pieces of the puzzle, and a Wipe Away.
So I think Zach's game plan here should to slow things down. The faster you try to go against a deck like Jeskai Control, the harder you're going to lose to 1 counterspell, or sometimes like 2 counterspell on 2 or 3 mana. And in those scenarios, you just spend a lot of resources, and then they counter the ritual in the wrong spot, and you end up losing right then and there. So if I were him, I'd be bringing in 4 copies of pieces of the puzzle, just looking for that really long game setup, and then the 2 copies of Empty the Warren. And I'd be looking to, I don't really know what I would board out. I'm trying to think. I mean, most of your deck is just rituals and card draw, so
it's tough too. You really can't trim on a lot of your elements because you need to maintain your rituals. I think that shaving on mana creatures is something that you see from this deck against the Lightning Bolt decks.
It's kind of tough though. The games where you play a Goblin Electromancer, a Brawl Chief of Compliance, are the games where you win. And if you cut any amount of those, you're actually just making the 1 or 2 spot removals that the Jeskai Control deck draws after sideboard that much better. So honestly, I'd rather try to just keep them all in and just overload the removal spells as opposed to trimming a bunch of them and just trying to win without them. Your deck, you have a reasonable number of rituals, but they're not all that powerful. It's not like we're casting Seething Song and stuff. So I would just, play like your normal game plan, but just try to maybe go a little harder on things like Empty the Warrens.
Would you say it's a difficult puzzle to sideboard?
Well, we have all the pieces.
You've got all the pieces.
Yeah.
Still a tough puzzle.
Yeah.
If you like what you see here on twitch.tv/SGT Tour, then why not subscribe? $5 a month, great value. You get to vote on the quarterfinals. You will vote on which matches we're going to watch in the elimination rounds. Going to be a lot of great decks in this tournament. This Team Modern event, really unique, very exciting so far. You'll, of course, get access to custom emoticons and a unique badge.
I'll say this. I don't want to spoil it by telling you which ones, but there may or may not be some emoticons coming out very soon for Versus Live.
Ooh. Get ahead of that. Subscribe today.
Yeah. We are always looking for ways to reward people for being loyal to our brand and our shows and whatnot. We have started doing Versus Live on the SCG Tour channel. So once we figure out some ways to reward you, whether it's, we say your name on stream whenever you sub, that's a thing. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I sub to people just so I hear my name on stream. I subbed to Caleb Durward the other day, and he was just like, "Oh, thanks, Todd," and that made me feel really good.
Yeah.
Just saying.
He's a great streamer.
He is a great streamer.
You should subscribe to us and Caleb.
He also just got sponsored by Tempo Storm today, I believe.
Yeah. Magic is going places.
Yeah, Tempo Storm, a pretty famous brand on the esports scene, and it looks like they're making a move into the Magic Arena.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That was a good pun. But yeah, subscribe to our Twitch page. Join the feature match area. Let's watch some more Magic. Looks like we got a mulligan for Nick Cowden. See if he's happy with 6. You saw game 1 was pretty rough on the Jeskai side of things.
Yeah, never really applied pressure. Had to settle the wreckage to prevent an Empty the Warrens from being too devastating, but ultimately the lands gained from Zachary Kiihne off of that settle the wreckage spelled demise for Nick Cowden.
Right. Cowden's happy on 6, scries to top, plays a Flooded Strand. We'll find out exactly how happy he is with that top card. Kiihne will start off cracking a Scalding Tarn. Down to 19. Here's a Serum Visions.
Yeah, Kiihne knows that this matchup could go for a while just because of the nature of Jeskai Control, as well as his deck. If he's unable to assemble quick combos, and he has to go through multiple iterations of the Past in Flames type stuff or the Empty the Warrens type stuff, he needs to play quickly. And obviously, a master of the archetype knows what he's doing and is able to play very quickly. All right, take it back. He's taking on this one. Take it back. Just kidding. All right. No cracking of the fetch line here, signifying that that top card he scryed was good. And in fact, logic, not a piece of interaction here, is exactly what the doctor ordered.
Yeah, Scalding Tarn is a second land, and Kiihne is going to play a Spire Bluff Canal, and both players content to pass on 2.
And Nick Cowden here are going to be fetching up, my guess, as a basic island, and then playing Sulphur Falls as his land for turn. Keeps him in abundance of mana, so he can Logic Knot for X = 1 without exiling anything from the graveyard. But worst comes to worst, he might be able to go Logic Knot plus Dispel in a really bad spot.
Yeah, as you said, there's basic island. There's Sulphur Falls as a land for turn. Goes to 19 and passes. Over on Zach Kiihne's side, there's a second Spire Bluff Canal.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Kiihne doesn't really want to play something like Pieces of the Puzzle right now, simply because he has 7 cards in hand, and that would put him up to 8 if he cast it. So he's looking to burn some resources here, probably just going for a mini Empty the Warrens to put the screws to Cowden and force action.
Yeah, started with Manamorphose. That one's usually pretty free. Here's Poetic Ritual as the second spell. Does that one resolve? If you're concerned about Empty, this is probably the spell you have to counter, right?
No, absolutely. This will put him up to 3. Just tapping a land means 4. My guess is he's just going for Empty for 6, and this is a spot where Cowden really wants to interact before things get too bad.
Yeah, so Cowden's going to respond, cracking that other fetch land. Looks like Hallowed Fountain entering untapped. He's at 16.
Oh, he actually has a Vendilion Click. This might be a perfect spot to go for a Vendilion Click. It's a little bit of a gamble, but it would be so sweet if he just sniped off that Empty the Warrens, and then Zachary Kiihne just wasted a ritual for no gain.
Yeah. Goes for the Logic Knot, though.
Yeah, there's also the chance you die, so that's fine. That's fine.
Right. And over on Cowden's side.
Or it's 2 Empty the Warrens. Yeah, things could go wrong.
Yeah.
You also give him a piece of Storm Count. Like, it's not great.
There's a Blood Moon in Kiihne's hand. There could be some repercussions.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, back in Cowden's side, makes his 4th land drop. He's in Cryptic Command territory with that basic island. Zach Kiihne makes a 4 land drop, but he's not in Gifts Ungiven territory. It's a Steam Vents tapped.
Yeah, he could always go Ritual into Gifts Ungiven, but that's never a spot you want to be in as the Storm player. You want to be accruing card advantage and saving those rituals for the big turns, whether as Empty the Warrens or what have you.
Hieroglyphic Illuminations end step for Cowden. On his turn, just a Sacred Foundry tapped. On Kiihne's side, just a Steam Vents tapped, and Cowden's going to take the opportunity for an end step Vendilion Click, get a look at that Storm hand.
Yeah, this hand's actually quite unique. Blood Moon is not something I expected to come in. He does have Ignite Memories in hand, which is not something I expected either, because the Jeskai control deck usually functions with a bunch of really cheap instants and sorceries and doesn't have a lot of spells in hand usually that would be dealing them a lot of damage with the Ignite Memories. We have Past in Flames, Blood Moon, Empty the Warrens, and Pieces of the Puzzle. Awkwardly enough, with only 1 island on the battlefield, Kiihne opting for multiple turns not to cast Blood Moon because it actually hurts him more than it helps.
Yeah, I believe that the Ignite Memories is largely part of the plan to try to beat resolved surgical extractions.
Yep.
The deck just kind of wants to have more spells that can win the game.
I mean, that's certainly fair. In this particular spot, it might actually end up being good. There could be a point where Cowden goes for like a cheap piece of interaction and then just gets dinked by Ignite the Memories with like a random Cryptic Command stuck in hand or something.
Yeah, Cowden's going to take the Pieces of the Puzzle. That makes sense. The rest of the hand is just kind of mishmatched. You have 2 different Storm spells, no rituals, a Past in Flames.
Yeah, I think it was really banking on that early Empty the Warrens on turn 3 to really get the job done, thanks to that Manamorphose. But unfortunately for Kiihne, things are not going great.
Yeah. For Cowden's turn, attack with the Vendilion Click, bump Kiihne down to 16 and passes back.
Yeah, depending on what Kiihne draws this turn, he could just cast another cantrip effect, the Serum Visions, play another land, and then cast Empty the Warren for 6, and that's fine.
Yeah, the mountain's already there. He started with Sleight of Hand, then here's Serum Visions, Storm's at 2.
Yeah, and in this spot, you don't really want to play a Ritual or something, because if the Ritual gets countered, you actually don't get to cast the Empty the Warren. So opts to go for 6 Goblins, facing off against a lone Vendilion Click, and I think the 6 Goblins are pretty far ahead, if you ask me.
Yeah, 6 damage is more than 3 where I'm from.
Well, sometimes. It depends on if you're at 3 or not.
That is true. Removing the offending player from the game, always a good strategy.
Yeah, who cares about card advantage when your opponent is dead? Yeah.
Right, Vendilion Click's going to come back across. That'll connect. Basic planes added to the mana base for Cowden.
Kiihne chomping at the bit for that settle the wreckage again. Give it to me! Give it to me!
Yeah, let me go drum up 3 more lands again. But looks like those 6 goblins are just going to connect. Cowden should drop to 13, and here's a post-combat Blood Moon.
I think this Blood Moon's actually an attempt to strand Cryptic Command in Cowden's hand so that Ignite Memories could potentially do some real work in a turn or two. He's winning the race right now with these Goblin tokens. He drew another piece of the puzzle. He's in really good shape, and he hasn't really used that many resources. He's hit a bunch of land drops. He's about to resolve this piece of the puzzle and get 2 more cards, and his hand is stacked.
Yeah, Blood Moon and pieces of the puzzle resolved. Makes you wonder what Cowden could possibly have in hand. Is it a bunch of burn spells? That's probably the best he could have.
Yeah, I think I've seen Lightning Helix, but I've also seen a Snapcaster Mage, and I believe a Dispel. And that is 3 of 4, and I don't know what the last one is.
Pieces of the puzzle found a Remand and a Poetic Ritual, I believe.
Yeah, this Snapcaster is going to go Helix, and then we're playing a naked Snapcaster, and that's going to do it. Kiihne picks him up. We got a game 3 on our hands.
I guess you were right. 3 is sometimes more than 6.
Yeah, you know, who's winning the race? Not the person who scooped up their cards.
Typically not.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen.
Oh, same.
You hate to see it.
Yeah.
It does happen.
Yeah, didn't mean to do it to him.
And for Zach Kiihne, he really needs to win this last one. His team is in a rough spot. I guess needs a little strong, but the rest of his squad is just down a game. Jonathan Benson taking the first one over Chris Turnbull, and Nicholas Montaquila taking the first over Evan Whitehouse.
Yeah, when this is not the spot you want to be in as a team, having one match going to game 3 and then your other 2 matches are down a game, it's not the best feeling in the world, but none of the matches are done. The sideboards coming in could be helpful for one or the other. The Dredge versus Ironworks match, I think, is particularly interesting because it depends a lot on the speed of the Dredge draw, but also whether or not either player just ends up drawing some piece of interaction. I would say Dredge sometimes has Leyline of the Void, maybe Ancient Grudges or something to slow down the Mox Opals, or to kill an Ironworks at just the right time and slow him down that way. But if Jonathan Benson just has, a Relic of Progenitus or whatever anti-graveyard card they play that's an artifact, that could just buy him enough time to combo through any sort of disenchant type disruption or find the necessary Nature's Claim or whatever to take care of the Leyline of the Void.
Yeah. Or just go nuts with the Psy Master Thopterist.
Right. Now, as far as the Colorless Eldrazi versus Ironworks deck is concerned, this Colorless Eldrazi deck is pretty sweet. And if I'm not mistaken, that's probably the one we're going to have on Flashback if we have enough time to do that.
Ooh.
Or not Flashback, the Time Shifted, excuse me.
We have Serum Powders.
Yeah, Serum Powder alongside Eternal Scourge is quite possibly my favorite Magic interaction.
It's the only modern deck that mulligans to 8.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Not only that, it reminds me a lot of the deck Joe Lissette played at the Players' Championship a while back, where he would play Gemstone Mine to get the luck counter and exile like a Gristlebrand, and then he would use Pull from Eternity to put it into the graveyard. Like
he went deep on that one.
Like an Entomb.
Yeah.
And he had Serum Powder in that deck as well to give him more looks with Pull from Eternity to find the giant creature he needed to reanimate. So it was a pretty sweet brew.
That was a wild one. You think either of these players is changing anything based off that game 2 Blood Moon?
Absolutely. I think Kiihne immediately took one card out of his deck and put it into the sideboard. My guess, it was the Blood Moon.
I follow that. Kiihne will start us off here in our deciding game 3. Scalding Tarn finds Basic Island. Sleight of Hand is the cast. Kiihne's at 19. Gonna look at 2 cards.
Yep. Sleight of Hand, one of the more overlooked cantrips in Modern. It never really shines because it's just generically okay. You look at Ponder, you look at Preordain, these cards are stellar. You got to think back, when was the last time Sleight of Hand, like you were happy to cast one? And for me, it was like
I'm pretty
standard
sure, yeah,
Psychotalk,
it's 9th edition.
7th edition.
Well, it was in 9th. I think it was okay in that format.
It was good.
But those
in
decks were
7th.
like, yeah, it was definitely good in 7th.
Yeah. But that was also 16 years ago, 17 years ago.
It was not recent.
Yeah, what do I know?
Cowden's going to start off with an untapped Steam Vents at 18.
It's interesting choosing to shock there to hold up either Dispel or Spell Snare or something like that. I guess maybe afraid of a turn 2 Goblin Electromancer / Brawl Chief of Compliance.
Yeah, a hand that has Spell Snare and no Bolt. That would make a lot of sense. Kiihne's going to crack a Scalding Tarn for his Steam Vents. He resolved an Opt somewhere in there. He's at 18, and here's a Serum Visions. Hand's got a pretty good mix of red cards.
Yeah, the red cards are the money ones. All the blue ones just say, replace me, replace me. Once your hand is all red, it's either the best possible or the worst possible, because it's either all rituals or rituals and the goods.
Kiihne didn't have the land last turn. Cowden does make his 3rd land drop with another Steam Vents, but on turn 4, Kiihne does deploy Spire Bluff Canal. This is definitely a matchup where you do want to hit your land drops for a little while.
Oh, absolutely. You know, you play a bunch of rituals because they accrue storm count, but you also play rituals because you want to generate a bunch of mana to cast spells. And I think that's exactly what the Storm deck wants to do, is hit its first 4 or 5 land drops at least, especially in a matchup like this where your Jeskai control opponent is really starting to pull ahead by just hitting land drops.
Yeah. Cowden plays a Flooded Strand. On end step, Kiihne starts with Manamorphose, then Rituals into Gifts Ungiven. That's met with Dispel. Now in his main phase, he's going to attempt a Pieces of the Puzzle to try to get that card advantage back.
Yeah, using a Ritual for Gifts Ungiven, never the spot you want to be in, as we discussed earlier, but Kiihne just kind of flooded with resources with Gifts Ungiven, Manamorphose, Pieces of the Puzzle. You know, he's just trying to force one through. Unfortunately for him, Nick Cowden has 2 answers with Dispel and Negate to clean them both up nicely.
Yep. Cracked the Scalding Tarn for a basic island to cast and negate, so he's at 17, but he has covered every problem that Kiihne has presented. Looks like no 5th land drop, but Search for Niscanta is deployed for the turn.
Yeah, that tends to happen actually. After sideboard, the Jeskai control deck gets to trim a bit of that removal. Cards like Path to Exile come out, and that allows them to have a bunch of this cheap interaction. Like we see the Dispel, the Negate, another Dispel in hand. That Enduring Explosive gives them a check to a potential empty the Warrens. He's got most of the bases covered already, and alongside the Search for Niscanta, it's just going to help him find even more.
Kiihne, after missing that 1 land drop, has made them all up to 5. And on Cowden's turn, you got to look at Surgical Extraction with this search. You put that one in the graveyard.
Yeah, once your opponent puts a Surgical Extraction in the graveyard with Search for Niscanta in a matchup where it's reasonable, you're not in good shape.
Right. Kiihne doing nothing the last 2 turns, just drawing and passing. Cowden making a couple more land drops, a Mountain and a Field of Ruin entering the fray. Still has a 2nd Dispel in hand. Looks like a couple Lightning Bolts and a Snapcaster Mage. Pretty nice holdings.
Yeah, he's not trying to shove all in here with a Snapcaster Mage just yet. Usually you want to do the first Snapcaster, you want to target like a counterspell, which ultimately puts pressure on the battlefield, but you also make sure that you don't die. And then the 2nd Snapcaster is the one that usually turns the corner, gets the Lightning Bolt, goes for a flashback, and you know, then you turn the corner, put some pressure on, throw a flurry of Lightning Bolts at him, and kill him.
Kiihne finally starts a turn. At least he casts a Sleight of Hand, and then he's pretty content to pass with 7 cards in hand. Cowden will fire off that Field of Ruin end step to take care of his Steam Vents. When Cowden will go to his turn, and Kiihne is just going to wipe away the Search for Niscanta. Does not allow Cowden to transform that this turn, and forces him to spend mana at sorcery speed if he wants to get that back online.
Yeah, and every mana spent at sorcery speed here is pretty important in this fight that is inevitable over the next turn or two. Kiihne knows that the game is coming to a point where He needs to figure out a route to victory, or things are going to get out of hand quickly. Once Cowden's able to transform Search for Scanta into the Sunken Ruin, he's going to be able to start finding even more pieces of cheap interaction, or just burn spells that he can just start throwing end of turn and just come closer and closer to winning the game, even at instant speed.
Yeah. And we're talking about taxing sorcery speed mana. It's also just another mana source. And you see Cowden misses his 7th land drop, which can be relevant in this matchup.
Right.
Back on Kiihne's side, he's starting things with a Poetic Ritual.
Yeah, this is pretty dangerous for Cowden to let resolve. Kiihne only has access to 2 sources of red mana right now. If he went for a counterspell on that first ritual, he could put Kiihne in a spot where he just doesn't have enough actual red mana to combo out. But now that he has access to the resolved ritual, things can go south right here, right now.
Yeah, after resolving the ritual, the next spell is Goblin Electromancer. Cowden will probably want to respond to that one.
He might let it resolve and then throw a Lightning Bolt at it in response to whatever the next spell played is.
Sure.
Kiihne burning that ritual here signifies to me at least that he is going for it no matter what happens. He's going to try to fight through, cast a bunch of stuff, and Grape Shot for lethal if things work out.
Yep. Here's a Desperate Ritual. Storm should be at 3. Cowden responds with Lightning Bolt and Goblin Electromancer. Storm's at 4.
Yeah, and with this Lightning Bolt on the stack, Kiihne can actually play another Desperate Ritual for the 1 mana floating. And even as another Lightning Bolt here wouldn't change things. So Cowden probably needs to let this resolve, but it could result in some dangerous chains if he's able to cast Gifts Ungiven here for only 3 mana as opposed to 4.
Right. These turns are definitely pretty stressful on the Jeskai side of things.
Heck, I think they're stressful from the Storm side of things too. You know, in this spot, like you have to think, okay, what can I beat? Can I beat Dispel plus? You know.
And here's Remand on Desperate Ritual.
It's pretty interesting. I would have assumed that Remand might have just targeted the Lightning Bolt. Because it doesn't cost you a mana. You know, this Desperate Ritual is already reduced in cost. It's already going to gain you the 3. The Lightning Bolt, you actually tax Nick for 1. You know, it's not like the Lightning Bolts or the Desperate Ritual is being countered right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was really interesting. And here's Dispel on the Desperate Ritual being targeted by the Remand. That does put Storm to 7.
Yeah, but guess what?
Does Kiihne have 2 Grape Shots?
Bang! Shotgun! Turn the other one over!
There's 1. That was Storm at 8. Another copy should be lethal, barring a couple corner cases. A Lightning Helix could maybe fix things.
So if this is 8 and the next one's 9, that means that Cowden actually has to counter 2 Grape Shot copies and not be dead. And you know what doesn't counter a sorcery, Ryan?
I believe Dispel.
Dispel doesn't counter a sorcery. You are correct.
Nailed it.
Technically correct.
Best
kind of correct.
Ooh, Cowden's going to spend some time looking around. What can I do about this? Perhaps checking to see if there was already a Grape Shot in the graveyard for some reason to try to Snapcaster Surgical Extraction that.
Yeah.
No such luck.
If he had, so let's say he had Logic Knot here. He could actually Logic Knot the original Grape Shot, and then with all the copies on the stack, he could Snapcaster Mage on the Surgical Extraction and steal the one from the graveyard. Since it's sorcery speed, all the copies are on the stack. Nothing you can do about it. But unfortunately, only has the Dispel. Can't quite get there and ultimately falls to the double Grape Shot for the second game this match.
Yeah, Zach Kiihne going to pull it off 2-1 in pretty impressive fashion. Very well navigated games. And yeah, that was a really weird line. He remanded his own spell in a spot where it just kind of got dispelled. But he figured it out. That was the go turn.
I figured it out. That was that's the meme. We're coming back to the booth. Okay,
yeah.
Let's come back to the booth.
All right.
That's bait.
Yeah.
I'm a living meme.
He had it rolled up.
No, he targeted his own spell in hopes that his opponent would play the extra spell that added to the storm that was Xaxes.
That got the Grape Shots up to lethal.
Perfect.
Really
love it.
Great navigation.
Love it. All right. Do we have another match ready here, or are we going to be... Okay, we're going to be heading to a backup.
Yeah, the other matches were still going, so we're going to cut back in.
Let's see. We got
All right, we're going to have
Montaquila.
Evan Whitehouse on Dredge.
All right.
Oh, sorry, he's on Ironworks.
Sorry.
He dredged at the invitation. He's on Ironworks today.
That's right. And we have Nicholas Montaquila playing the colorless Eldrazi deck that we talked about earlier with Serum Powder
Love it.
and Eternal Scourge.
There better be at least 14 cards exiled when we cut in.
Yeah,
Let's get
we'll
back
see.
to it. Let's see what's going on.
Yeah. It's like we're just starting Game 3 here, so we're going to get to see all of those Serum Powder fireworks, if there are any. Pre-game actions, pre-game actions. Leyline.
All right.
That's a different pre-game
action.
That's fine.
Don't mind it.
That's fine.
And one of very few ways for a colorless deck to interact with Ironworks. On top of that, he has Eldrazi Temple and a turn 1 Eldrazi Mimic. Pretty strong start.
Oh, for sure. And Ironworks doesn't apply a lot of blockers to the battlefield. Good chance this Eldrazi Mimic does a lot of damage this game, so long as Nicholas is able to follow it up with a couple of large Eldrazi.
Whitehouse will start with an Inventor's Fair and a Terrarian.
Yeah, but unluckily for him, Nature's Claim needs to be cast here on this Leyline of the Void, or else he will not get the dies trigger from the Terrarium.
Yeah, Leyline of the Void doing some work. Here's Scavenger Grounds, and there's Thorn of Amethyst. That's also pretty good against these multiple spell combo decks.
We playing Legacy Vintage? Huh?
Yeah, you don't see this card too often in Modern. Let's get Thorn of Amethyst on screen.
Yeah, Thorn of Amethyst is one of those cards that newer cards are hoping to be. You know, Thalia, Guardian of Thraben is arguably better than Thorn of Amethyst because it has a 2/1 first striking body attached to it. But artifacts are notoriously hard to source to Plowshares.
Yes.
Or, I don't
Lightning
know, Lightning Bolt. So, yeah, Thorn of Amethyst, 2-mana artifact. Non-creature spells cost 1 more mana to cast. Very strong against decks like Storm, Ironworks, any opponent who ain't trying to play fair.
Yeah. All Whitehouse can do is play a Grove of the Burnwellows. There's Thorn of Amethyst. Thorn of Amethyst. I like the art on this card. It's just so plain, so colorful.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we actually missed some pregame actions with the Serum Powder because Eternal Scourge just got cast.
All right.
And I'm pretty sure that's from Exile because I see a Serum Powder down there at the bottom of the screen.
That all tracks.
Mulligan to 8.
Love it.
Although it also just frees up, like if you mulligan to 6 and hit a Serum Powder and Eternal Scourge, you're just on 7 again, basically.
Right back to 7.
You got that 3/3 waiting. That thing's hard to kill, too.
Yeah, the Scourge also makes the Mimic connect for 3. Mutavault is the land for turn. Pretty significant pressure being applied by Cowden now. Going back on Whitehouse's side, Psy Master Thopterus coming off of Yavimaya Coast. That's going to do 1 damage, so be dropping to 14, I believe, off of that.
Yeah, and if you see here, Montaquila actually has Dismember off the top, and that is definitely a nod to the strength of Psy Master Thopterus in this matchup. That card single-handedly beats graveyard removal, artifact-based hate, and it also turbocharges your Ironworks if you have that going. It's just the best sideboard option that I've ever seen out of a combo deck. It does it all.
Ghost Quarter is the land for turn. There's Dismember. That's going to take care of Psy Master Thopterus.
Yeah, 4 life and 2 mana, of course, because of the Thorn of Amethyst.
Yeah.
Now a swing for 5, maybe more here. There's another Eternal Scourge. Mulligan to 9.
Ooh.
We got the Mulligan to 9.
9. You do not pass on a 9-card hand. Eternal Scourge triggers Eldrazi Mimic. Here's an attack for 6. That's going to knock Evan Whitehouse down to 8 life.
Weird. 8 life. Inventor's Fair does not have enough artifacts on the battlefield to trigger. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 power on the battlefield. We're in a tough spot here if you're Evan Whitehouse. Not looking great.
It is not pretty.
Fire Spout would be the one that would maybe buy you some time, maybe.
And he would need a land Fire Spout to get through the Thorn.
That's true.
Though the deck's lands do enter the battlefield untapped. It is an unfortunate situation where you can use the Terrarian to filter, but you can't cast additional cogs. They're all just very negative on mana, and Whitehouse has nothing going on. Yeah. Montaquila is going to pick this one up 2-1.
Just all blanks. Probably had a bunch of like chromatic stars in hand, you know, like things that trigger when they go to the graveyard, and not a whole lot else. I think that we actually have the last match. We can we can either cut to that right now, or we can watch the full match. I think we're going to be watching the full match. Oh, no. Okay, I'm being told right now from our wonderful director that, of course, our technology, we're still learning some things, working out some of the kinks. We are going to be cutting to that match in just a moment once we get everything set up as far as the graphics and stuff is concerned. So we're going to be bringing you the finale of that match as well as the overall team match in just a moment. But that was pretty sweet to watch. We got to see the full power of Serum Visions alongside Eternal Scourge. And there's a good chance that if your hand has Serum Powder and 2 copies of Eternal Scourge in it, it's not that good. So it's like a free mulligan that gains you 2 cards.
Yeah. Also, that turn 0 ley line, you saw the deck really presenting everything that you can do without colored mana in your deck. Really impressive stuff. And we have a match going down to match 3. This is what team tournaments are all about.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, this is what it's all about. You know, if I have to assume that Evan Whitehouse does not feel very good right now. You know, he did not win his match, but that's the beauty. We can win. We can still win.
And I'll rest on Chris Turnbull. Undredged, the deck that Evan Whitehouse just top-8 an invitational with, so pretty intimidating team.
Oh, absolutely. Let's go and get down to the match and see who takes it down between these 2 players. We got Dredge on the left side with Chris Turnbull. We got Ironworks on the right side. This deck has been tearing it up in Modern lately, but it looks like right now he's in trouble.
Yeah, Chris Turnbull's got a lot of permanents. Jonathan Benson has 2 lands.
This is not fine.
Grove of the Burn Willows, Darksteel Citadel versus 3 prized amalgams, a Narcomoeba and 2 Bloodghast.
I figured out what happened. A turn 2 Cathartic Reunion was cast, and then a turn 3 Cathartic Reunion was cast.
Ugh.
And if you don't have any piece of graveyard interaction, you're not doing so good. And a missed land drop here, it looks like, from Jonathan Benson's side. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, that hand is not doing anything. It looks like he might have been leaning hard on that Ancient Stirrings in the graveyard, but we're back.
Maybe just whiffed on land?
Yeah.
Was digging 5, looking at 5 for a land?
Yeah, I don't know. Could be like a Psy Master Thopterus hand that didn't shake up. But Whitehouse, he's back at it. He's dredging again. He's at 24. He's got nothing to be afraid of.
Yep.
Here's a Faithless Looting. Life from the Loam will be dredged. Cathartic Reunion, Faithless Looting, and a Stinkweed Imp. Stinkweed Imp will be the second dredge off the looting he's casting. A couple lands, a Prized Amalgam, a Bloodghast, another land.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of cards here that actually just win the game for Chris Turnbull. He still has to discard 2 from the Faithless Looting. Very likely just going to discard some Dredgers. Wins with a Conflagrate, wins with a Creeping Chill off the top, which we missed. Wins with a land for the Bloodghast that was dredged over, I believe. Oh, no, Bloodghast doesn't have haste, so not quite lethal on the Bloodghast.
Yeah, Benson at 16, so still probably dead in 2 turns. He's going to need to do something big on the following turn.
Yeah, but Ironworks is not really a deck that goes big in 1 turn. It kind of ramps towards these Ironworks turns, and at this juncture, it would require like another Darksteel Citadel and multiple Mox Opals to cast Ironworks, start sacrificing some stuff, and then have all of your combo pieces.
Here's a big attack. Here's 14 damage coming across. That's going to bump Benson down to 2. No Conflagrate available just yet. Turnbull's thinking about casting a Damping Sphere.
Yep. I love playing the Damping Sphere here as just a way to basically lock things up. That's going to force Cowden to have, Benson to have another piece of interaction, which is an end of turn, Nature's Claim or something.
Yep. And Benson's just got nothing. That's going to decide it. So the team of Chris Turnbull, Evan Whitehouse, Zach Kiihne, they're going to win this match. They're going to advance to 7-1. Jonathan Benson, Nicholas Montaquila, Nick Cowden, they're going to fall 1-2, but they're also going to settle at 7-1. So things could certainly be a lot worse. Both of these teams will be around for day 2 of competition.
Yeah, and as we talked about earlier on the broadcast,